Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's video on religious trauma. I'm Angel DeSantis. Please click like and subscribe, and I have a religious trauma course that I will link below, along with my therapist. I remembered this week. In this week's video, I would like to talk about one of the major roadblocks that I have seen people get stuck at on their healing journey, because we all start the journey at a different place, and it's not linear, but there is forward progress or forward momentum. And I have observed in myself and in other people that there's this one thing that is kind of a major stumbling block, and a lot of us can get stuck there. And I just want to address it because the healing journey, the beautiful part about it is that it never ends. And if you hear that and you're like, God damn it, that's fine. But the beautiful thing about it is that it doesn't end, and you can continue to evolve and grow and become versions of yourself that you did not know could exist. But I want to call out this one kind of major stumbling block that I've observed that can kind of keep you stuck. And it does feel like a good place to be. It is part of the healing journey, but I think the whole idea of healing means forward momentum. So even if you're falling, at least you're falling forward. And even if you're in a place that's kind of a dark place or a weird place or a sad place, whatever it is, you're still moving forward. And as you're able to move forward, you're able to continue to heal and continue to find beautiful spots in your life, like spots of joy or just feeling good about yourself. And all those places are still in front of you. Even if they're behind you, they're also in front of you as well. But I want to talk about this one little thing where a lot of us get stuck. And that is where you get to the point in the healing journey where you're able to express anger, which is a good thing. And I have a video on anger that I'll link somewhere up here. But you get to the point that you can express anger, and then you realize that you are allowed to be angry at the people who abused you. And whether that's the church, or in my case, the cult, whoever it is, you have a very righteous anger, which can show up as a lot of energy. You have a righteous anger and you have valid reasons, and you do deserve to call out these people or to try and go get them. And that is where I see a lot of the stuckness happening. And I believe there are a lot of reasons for this. By the way, not a therapist. I just want to say that. All of this is my opinion and personal experience, which is valid, but take it with a grain of salt. But what I have observed is that a lot of people get stuck there. And I think there's a lot of reasons for it. The first one, I think, is the ability to actually be angry at someone is part of the healing journey. And it does mean that you have healed. So feeling that anger feels good because you know that you've actually unlocked something that is healthy and that is part of the spectrum of human emotion. And you do deserve to feel that. Secondly, it can also feel like it gives you a sense of purpose, because when you leave a religious community, part of the leaving is that you lose a sense of purpose. And so if you lost God, or you lost the reasoning for your life, and you don't have it any longer, and now all of a sudden you realize, I'm allowed to be angry about this, I'm allowed to be upset, this gives me a lot of fuel, and I have the problem or the thing that was done, which was incorrect, I'm rightfully angry, and here's the target. And that feels really good. That feels like a sense of purpose. And a lot of people do very useful things in that moment, where they realize that, the Catholic Church shouldn't be abusing children. Valid, absolutely true. And they deserve to be punished for it. Absolutely true. And then in my case, it's like, the cult should never have existed in the first place. Pedophiles are bad. The people who abuse children should pay for it. Also true. That's also incredibly valid. Everything that I've said is true. And I get to go, if I choose to, if I'm kind of at a point where I don't really have a sense of purpose, and all of a sudden I realize this, and I have all this energy to go after it, that's what I'm going to do. That feels good. That gives me a sense of purpose, a sense of empowerment. I have something to do. I have the energy to do it, and it's a correct thing to do. And I see a lot of people do a lot of good things once they hit that moment. in their life. But I also see a lot of people get stuck there. And the difficult thing about it is that it's difficult to get out of. First of all, you don't need to get out of it. You can stay there. That can be your full life's commitment. And it would be a good commitment. And it's valid and it's good. But sometimes I see people get to that point, do a lot of good stuff, and then they don't quite know how to move forward from that, because sometimes being in that place is incredibly draining, and it isn't less stressful than being in something traumatic. Sometimes it is kind of a redo or a re-triggering every day of the trauma that you went through. And so the reason I mention it is because if you are in that place where you're a little bit confused, where you think, wait, I'm doing something good, all of this is good stuff, but I don't feel good, and it just doesn't sit well. There's something that's like, it bothers you. I just want to address that so that maybe it unlocks something in you and you realize that that is a part of the healing journey. It doesn't have to be your destination. You can continue to evolve past that point in your life. And the reason I want to address it is because I see so many people doing beautiful things with their lives. But sometimes when you commit to something like this, when you're in a state of clarity all of a sudden, again, massive clarity, massive energy, you have a hero, you have a villain, the church or the abusive whatever it was, and you all of a sudden have resource and energy to go after them. That's a good thing. But if you are in that moment, or you found yourself attached to something and now you want to get out of it, sometimes we have to go through the whole re-traumatization of you feel guilty trying to get out. You're doing a good thing, so why would you leave? You're surrounded by people who are trying to help and do a good thing. And I see a lot of people who leave religious communities, get involved with nonprofits. And I just want to call out similarities between that, because when you are healing from trauma, it is not an overnight thing. It is not an over a year thing, or an over a 5 years or a 10 years. It's a constant journey where you are continually learning and relearning and finding out about things that perhaps you couldn't see previously. And I would like to call out the similarities between a religious community, a religious hierarchy, or cults, and nonprofit organizations, because a lot of us attach to them afterwards. Because again, you get the anger, you get the energy, this is a good thing that you're doing, but sometimes you get stuck right back in it. And I want to just call it out in case it starts to churn the wheels for you. I really, truly believe everyone has a knowledge deep inside of them that is correct. And if you listen to it, it will guide you towards your healing all the time, every single time. But it can be confusing if you got out of the religious community, or you got out of the abusive environment, and you all of a sudden would like to do something good, and you begin doing something good, and over time it starts to feel bad. And if you're in that moment, I hear you, I've been there. I think a lot of us have been there. And it can feel very, very eerily similar, which can make us feel like, how did I end up here again? Like, what on earth was that? Like, why did it take me, like, it took so much to leave the first thing. And now I'm stuck in this loop, and do I have to leave the second thing? And how did I end up here? And first of all, it's very clear how we end up there. And it's that if we don't actually go in and change our thought patterns, they take us for a little ride, and we can end up in similar situations over the course of our lives. And that's not to call out anything. Again, I don't know who you are watching this, so if you feel personally attacked, I apologize, but I don't know you. But it is something that I have seen a lot of people get stuck in, which is doing a good thing and having the energy to do it, and then sometimes getting stuck there developmentally, emotionally, mentally, physically, psychologically, which can feel very eerily familiar to the thing that you left. I just want to acknowledge that, because that is the place that I see a lot of people get stuck. And then I also do want to offer a way forward, because if you're like, great, Angel, like I figured out, I'm stuck, what now? My question to you is to ask you two things. One, what would bring you to life more? And I think that's a very important question to ask yourself is, how can I bring myself to life? And if you're in this moment and it still works, you still get a lot of energy doing this correct thing, and it still brings you to life, stay in that moment. Also, I have no idea what you're doing with your life, and don't let me tell you what to do with your life. But if it feels good and it continues to bring you to life, stay in that moment. But ask yourself, do yourself the courtesy of asking yourself, what can I do to bring myself to life? So that's number one. Number two is asking yourself, what does the next iteration of me look like? And I like to ask myself this because it helps me look forward instead of back. And sometimes we can get stuck looking back and trying to make the people who are in the past pay for what they did, which again, correct. But sometimes getting stuck there prevents our moving forward. So in order to move forward and to keep my gaze fixed forward instead of back, I ask myself, what is the next iteration of myself? What does that look like? So number one, ask what brings me to life. And number two is ask, what does the next iteration of myself look like? And the thing is if you're in the moment that you're supposed to be in, then does this bring me to life? Yes, absolutely. And then what does the next iteration of myself look like? It develops the picture more. So these are really good questions to ask yourself. I believe they're good questions to ask yourself, no matter where you are in your life. But give yourself permission to ask the question, and give yourself permission to be confused if you don't know the answer. But keep asking and keep answering. And the way that I do it, if I don't know the answer, is I give myself permission to give 3 bad answers. And it's just so that the wheels start churning. It just so that my brain starts to practice firing and starts to look for patterns and starts to think, what does the next iteration of me look like? And sometimes if I'm in a mood and I don't want to do the work, then I'm like, the next iteration of me is an astronaut, whatever. But it still helps because it still gets the brain moving and it still fixes your lens in a certain direction. So the 2 questions to ask yourself if you find that you are stuck in a moment and you would like to move yourself forward. Number 1, what brings you to life? How can you bring yourself to life? And number 2 is, what does the next iteration of yourself look like? And give yourself permission to go big. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope that it makes sense. And I know that if you're somewhere along the journey, maybe it doesn't make sense now, but maybe at some point it will. Or if you can think of someone who is at this point of their journey, share this with them. As always, thank you for being here. I love being here with you. I love that my trauma is something that I can share or is something that I can turn into community and into talking with y'all. And I hope that you feel less alone wherever you are. I hope that you know that there's hope. There always is. Ask yourself how to bring yourself to life. Let yourself answer and let yourself move into the next iteration of you. So thank you for being here, and I'll see you next time.